center divide, no. But there's really only one way out of my neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's over this, tow trucks backed up, police have it blocked.
On a night like
Yeah.
Yes.
So we took the long way around.
Yeah. Oh.
This is going to be fun.
Can you write some notes down for me?
So who picked the soundtrack, Mark? Well,
It's easy listening. Yeah.
country for me.
That just a little bit for me.
It's supposed to end at 7:30. Are they thinking
That's good.
I don't know. I actually didn't
Do you
know.
know if there's an end time?
I think I just heard them trying to wrap it up by 7:15, right?
Yeah, about 7:15, 7:30 at the latest. It's-
Okay.
Depends on us.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Testing. I want to welcome everyone for coming out tonight, and it's lovely. I know we need the rain, so bring it on. But again, thank you for coming out in the elements tonight for our District 2 Supervisor Candidates Forum. I want to give a big thanks to the candidates coming out tonight. I want to recognize we have Mayor Holly Andrade in the audience, Bill Lauriston. So thank you for coming out.
City treasurer.
Yeah, I see Richard Pearl over there, City Treasurer. Chris Wyatt somewhere back there, I think. But anyway, thank you for coming out. And again, my name is Tom Drury. I'm the CEO for the Lincoln Area Chamber of Commerce. And tonight, the questions that we're going to have tonight, the first 5 questions were 2 from the chamber, and 3 were taken from the online email that we sent out to all of you, the RSVP'd. We had quite a few questions come in, so we selected a few of those. And then we also have some index cards in the back that we'll take 1 or 2 of those tonight, time permitting. So if you haven't filled one out, if you want to fill out a question, we're going to select 1 or 2 of those, just time permitting tonight. So let me try and read my notes here. But anyway, we expect this to go about 1 hour and 15 minutes. And we want to give the candidates time to, be able to get across what they want to get across tonight. And I'm sure there'll be time afterwards that they'll hang out and talk to you if you have questions for them. So with that, I want to also thank our sponsors tonight. Mark Storsacci from Rocket TV. Mark's been a great sponsor. He's a tremendous member of the chamber, and of course the Women's Club. So thank you so much tonight for sponsoring, offering the building and the dessert. I don't know if you guys, the candidates, saw the cake back there, but a beautiful welcome candidates cake. So we'll be cutting that about 7 o'clock. So make sure you get a piece of cake before you leave, and drink lots of coffee. I made 2 big urns of
So
coffee.
we'll wrap up all of our comments by 7
Yeah.
the cake.
Yes. But with that, I want to introduce our chamber president, Mark Lester. Mark will be moderating tonight, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
All righty. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. So let's get started here. I'm going to start off with a brief introduction of the candidates, and then we'll jump into the questions. Scott Alvord serves as a Roseville City Council member. Him and his family are proud residents of Western Placer County. He's a proven, experienced community leader, a local business owner, and a devoted civil servant in the region. Next up is Shanti Landon, has served as District 2 Director to the Placer County Board of Supervisors since 2017. As a Rotarian and active community member, she is passionate about serving our community and giving back. Paul Joyner is a small business owner and longtime resident of Placer County. He serves as Lincoln City Council member and is a former mayor of Lincoln. He is known as a strong fiscal conservative who protects taxpayers. So now we're going to give each candidate 3 minutes each to introduce themselves. Let's start off with Scott.
Well, good evening. Clearly, there must not be anything good on TV tonight. I appreciate you guys caring enough about who's going to represent you in the next election to come out and listen to us speak. I took a recent spill pretty hard here in Lincoln. I mentioned that I gave blood, 6 stitches, 3 fractures in my wrist, and 1 in my elbow, so I'm clapping like this. I currently serve as a Roseville City Council member. It's the largest city in the county, and it's the only full-service city around. And that means we have all of our own utilities, police, fire, everything is owned by the city. I'm on my last term as a council member. I was actually looking forward to going back to my businesses full-time. And when my wife and I first moved here right after college, we've been here most of our lives now in the county. And we've started businesses here. We raised our family here. We have 7 children. It's a really interesting story, but I'll spare you the details of it tonight. 13 grandkids, and our 7 kids are all grown up and on their own, and they're wonderful parents, except for the youngest who don't have kids yet. I started a software company in college and still have that, and I had a computer science degree then, went back and got an MBA from Sac State, opened up a restaurant in downtown Roseville, ran that for 12 years, and really started getting involved in a lot of civic service. I was on the Roseville Revitalization Committee. I served as the president of the Downtown Roseville Merchants for 9 years. Very heavily involved in working with council members and understanding that most council members did not understand business. They said the right words, but they actually didn't understand it. They didn't know what it meant to get a permit, to have a plan checker come to your business, to write a paycheck and deal with the taxes in the state. It was quite an eye-opening experience, and it did help me get a lot involved in civic service. And when I decided to run for council, one of the big goals was to try to be a representative that actually showed up and represented, talked to stakeholders. And ever since I was elected, I've always had a community coffee, at least every month and a half, where I get out and I meet with the neighbors, I share information, I get feedback, I understand kind of the pulse of the community. Very involved in the neighborhood associations in Roseville. It's an organized group. It's not like HOAs. They're tied close to police and fire. But my service there on the city, one of the reasons I ended up running here, because we have term limits, I got a lot of community pressure to run, a lot of asking, and we did some research, and I really am getting more and more excited about serving, because I think this is an excellent place where we need good representation that communicates and talks to the public. So you'll find out more about us tonight.
Okay, thank you. Shanti Landon, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shanti Landon, and pronounced Shanti. My name is actually an East Indian name. My dad was an immigrant, came here from India when he was 17 years old, and really taught me at a very young age to appreciate what we have, that living in the United States is not just a blessing, but it's a privilege, and that I should never take that for granted, that I should be willing to work and earn anything that I want to attain, and that I should never think that I'm entitled to anything. And so I've taken that into adulthood, and I've been married for almost 24 years. We have 5 kids, and really I am doing this for my kids and my future grandkids, or our future grandkids, because I care so deeply about the future of Placer County. So 5 years ago, After a series of conversations with my husband and some events, I decided I wanted to run for supervisor. And knowing that I lacked experience in the realm of local government, I laid out my options in front of me and thought, okay, I could run for a lower office and get experience that way and work my way up. Or I could essentially get a job in the office, learn the job, and then run for it. And I decided that was the better option for me. I wanted the most efficient way to gain the best experience. And so I reached out to the sitting supervisor, Robert Wygant, who I did not know, asked him if he would let me shadow him. I told him I was willing to work for free full time. I just wanted to learn the job. And when he told me that I would have limited access as a volunteer, I asked if he would hire me as his district director. And thankfully, he said yes, and now it's been 5 years. And over the course of the last 5 years, I have had the blessing and the opportunity to essentially mirror a supervisor. I do pretty much everything he does other than vote. I help with policy development, talk to constituents, meet with legislators. I help solve problems. That's a big part of my job. And so now here I am, and looking forward, things that I'm focused on, and this is not an exhaustive list, but first and foremost is the long-term fiscal sustainability of our county. I think we have had generations of great leadership and people who were forward-thinking and thinking 20, 30 years down the road, and not about what feels good today, but what's going to be good for our future. And I really want to build upon that and make sure we keep that culture. Secondly is public safety. As we continue to grow and expand, which is going to happen, we are going to have more people here every year. And as that happens, it's very important to me that we make sure our public safety, both fire and police, are well funded and that we're paying above market rate so we can recruit and retain solid employees. And thirdly, economic development and small business. Small businesses comprise 91% of Placer County's business, so it's very important to me that we move out of the way at the local government level and support our small businesses. And lastly, I just want to say one thing that distinguishes me from anyone in the race and anyone on the Board of Supervisors. There does not currently exist anyone on the board or in this race who has kids at home. And while that's not everyone's demographic, it is a gap on the Board of Supervisors, and I believe I would represent families in Placer County, and I look forward to doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Joyner, please.
Thank you, Mark. I think many of you in the room know me. For those of you who don't, my name is Paul Joyner. I'm a Lincoln City Council member, currently serving my 4th term on the City Council, 3 terms as mayor, and prior to that, I was a planning commissioner. My family has been here for many, many years. I've lived within a few miles of this spot for the majority of my life. We've been here since the 1940s. My wife Lisa's family located to South Placer in the 1890s and has been on the same rice farm ever since, 5 generations and counting on that same rice farm. I tell you that because I want you to know that I am deeply rooted in Placer County. Lisa and I, this is our home, and we fight for our home. This is an important election. The current District 2 supervisor is retiring after holding the office for 26 years. His predecessor held the office for 24 years, half a century between 2 people. In the 26 years that Robert's been supervisor of District 2, the city of Lincoln's grown from a sleepy little town of about 8,400 people to over 50,000 people today. Roseville's grown from roughly 70,000 to over 150,000 people. So why is that important? Through the years, what I've discovered, through experience and through observation, is that county supervisors tend to govern as though they represent the unincorporated county only. And they do not. They represent all of us, the cities and the unincorporated areas alike. Sorry, I thought I heard you cutting me off there real quick. So,
Not yet, you still have time.
Yeah, that's fine. The point being, we have the same constituents. I think it's time that we have a supervisor who knows that and who governs with that in mind, a supervisor who builds partnerships with our cities, with our communities, and with our businesses. The County of Placer has seen very similar growth to what our cities have seen. It's currently a population of about 400,000 people. It is projected to grow by 30% over the next decade. That's 120,000 new residents over the next 10 years. 12,000 a year, and most of those are going to locate right here in District 2. As a supervisor, it'll be my challenge to preserve Placer County's quality of life and to protect our values in the face of that growth. Housing, both affordable and otherwise, transportation, roads, economic competitiveness, homelessness, which doubles every 7 years, will all need to be thoughtfully and deliberately addressed if we're going to keep Placer County the special place we all love. That's going to take knowledge, experience, and a steady hand moving forward, and that's why I'm running for Placer County Supervisor.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, we're going to jump into the questions, and we'll start with Scott first. As you know, the City of Lincoln has a tax sharing agreement with the county. Historically, past agreements have not been favorable to the city and our communities. What is your stance on future tax sharing agreements so that the revenue generated by local business is retained as much as possible to benefit our community? And the second part of the question is, and do you support development of the unincorporated area that is right on our borders?
That is the question that the voters need to, that's the most important question in this race, absolutely the most important question. When the county does a tax share agreement, when they annex land into the city, they make a deal with the city about how much tax gets shared with the city. The City of Lincoln was totally ripped off by the county. Every time the county builds a house, they actually lose money because they don't get enough money into their general fund to cover the growth. So as your city grows, you need to have police and fire and parks, and all that funding needs to be able to grow with it, and it actually gets diluted over time. The county was very not transparent in how they did it. The City of Lincoln had very bad leadership at the time. There was a lot of staffing issues. The county's done a temporary fix where they're giving some tax dollars now, but this isn't going to solve the problem. This has been an ongoing issue. The City of Roseville fights with them too. The county should be a synergistic partner with the cities. They should open their books. They should be totally transparent and make a fair deal so that the cities can prosper, not to be an antagonistic competitor with the cities, which is what's happening. You're watching what's happening at Bickford Ranch. There's a Bickford commercial property center going out there, and no tax share agreement was set up with that. When any of you go over and you buy something, when they build that, not a single penny is going to come back to your city. You're actually diluting your own revenue because you're giving it all to the county. They should have done a tax share agreement with that development. This is super, super critical. You've got to really weigh who's leading this, because the county is not being transparent to our cities. Our cities are complaining about it. And the promises don't matter. We know the city, we understand the city viewpoint, and I guarantee that when I'm on there as a supervisor, I will be very transparent. I'll make sure the staff open those books and work with the city to come up with a synergistic solution.
Thank you. So next up, do you need me to repeat the question? You're up next, Shanti.
Yeah, can you repeat it once? Just
Sure, absolutely. Historically, past agreements with tax sharing have not been favorable to Lincoln, the City of Lincoln, and communities. What is your stance on future tax sharing agreements so that the revenue generated by local business is retained as much as possible to benefit our community? And do you support development of the unincorporated area that is right on our borders?
Okay. So when it comes to the tax share negotiations, part of the reason that Lincoln is in the position that it is now, which is that they struggled with their public safety levels, goes back 30 years before any of us were ever at the table. So there's no one here to blame for that. But there were, at the time, for Lincoln Crossing, Sun City, and 12 Bridges, 22 cents to share. The county typically says they need 18.5 cents in order to provide their services, the jail, the DA, HHS, all of those services, that's what they need. And so the county actually came down to 16 cents, and Lincoln was left with 6 cents, which is not very much at all. And typically what would happen is they would go back to the developer and say, we need to fill that gap and fund that. That did not happen at that time. And so Lincoln was unfortunately in a place decades later where they had to make up that gap. I was part of those negotiations on the tax share agreement. They were pretty ugly, and they were pretty, it was eye-opening for me, but we came to a really good resolution, and I think can it points to what the future, I think, will be between the county and the cities, that I am very much a relationship person, and working with people is my thing. I love to sit down and have a compromise and figure out a way, because if Lincoln fails or if Roseville fails, then the whole county fails. We all want all of our cities to be elevated, right? And secondly, when it comes to the Bickford Marketplace project, that project has not come to the Board of Supervisors. It is not approved. It is on hold right now. And I have come out and said publicly that it would be very difficult for me to even consider the project if there was not a tax share agreement with the city of Lincoln, because the highest taxes come from gasoline here in the city, and there would be an 18-pump gas station there. And so that cannot happen. So I don't typically support any retail on the border of the cities, because I think that development should happen typically within the cities.
Thank you, Mark. Both of my colleagues got that somewhat right. The reality of the tax sharing agreements is that there are many of them, that each new area that annexes into the city negotiates a new agreement, and they are all different. Those agreements deal both with property tax revenues and with sales tax revenues. So to answer your questions about revenue from businesses, that's only a small piece of this. The bigger part of it is those property tax revenues. The county keeps a lion's share of all of those. Why is that important? It's important because the cities really have no choice but to accept these so-called negotiated deals. The county doesn't have to agree to annexation. They can simply say no, and the city doesn't grow. And so, historically, Lincoln and other cities have gotten the short end of the stick, no question of it. We are very lucky to have had partners in a very difficult conversation to renegotiate one of those tax sharing agreements. It's temporary, it's for a period of 8 years, potentially extendable to 10, but it has allowed us to have revenues coming off of Village 1 and some of 12 Bridges to hire additional police protection for new officers. We fight this very, very hard. I believe very firmly that from here forward, yes, the county absolutely needs to be made whole, but these tax sharing agreements are actually tax inducing within the cities. The county is made whole, the cities are not. As a result, they either have to, as Roseville did, increase sales tax revenue, or as most of the other cities do, create Melrose districts, CFDs, all these other tools to raise revenue to make up for the loss of revenue to the county.
Thank you. So the next question, we're going to start with you, Shanti, and we're going to try to tackle the homelessness question. As you're aware, homelessness is becoming a major issue in Placer County, not only affecting our residents, but our business community. If elected, what policies would you put forward to address homelessness? And secondly, what are your thoughts on the efforts being made to place a homeless campus in our county? Do you support this effort? If so, state why. If no, state why.
Super simple question that I can answer in 2 minutes. So first and foremost, my dad was schizophrenic and died homeless, and it was not for lack of programs available or for family willing to take him in. My dad, because of his mental illness, chose to live on the streets, and so this issue is near and dear to my heart, actually. So any policies that we have at the county are going to have to be a collaboration. It has to be a joint effort between all of the cities in the county. We have to work together because we're all impacted by it. Secondly, anything we do cannot just be housing the homeless. It has to deal with the core issues of homelessness, which are very often drug addiction and mental illness. So whatever programs we put in place are going to have to treat the whole person and get them through a program and back into society with support after they re-enter society, because if you just drop them off, they're likely going to recidivize and end up back in the shelter again. So whatever we do is going to have to be both of those things at the very least. When it comes to the proposed campus of Hope, if someone were to ask me right now, I say I'm supervisor, you must vote on this project right now, is it yes or no? I would have to say no right now, and these are my reasons why. So first and foremost, there has not been any long-term cost analysis done, at least on the county side, to know what the long-term costs of operations are going to be. It just has not been delineated. We have an idea of what the costs are going to be, but it's not out on a spreadsheet laid out of what the costs are. That's very concerning, and I feel like that has to be addressed. Secondly, I don't know where the public safety aspect is going to, how that's going to be dealt with. It will be in the proposed project would be in the unincorporated area of the county. So for services, do we have an agreement with Roseville, Rockland, Lincoln? Do we share those? Do we have mutual aid? And then lastly, there has been no public process. There hasn't been hearings, and it is not fair to move forward with something and make a decision without having that public process first.
Paul.
Thank you. This is a tough one. We've been wrestling with this for a long time now. I sit on the county pulled together an ad hoc homeless task force made up of county members, electeds from the cities, practitioners, law enforcement, all the rest. Unfortunately, we had to handle that on Zoom through many, many meetings, and we were broken up into different groups. The conversation was not as smooth and as helpful as it could have been. Nonetheless, we are working our way through what is possible and what is practical moving forward. I do not personally believe that it would be wise at this point in time for anybody on this panel or even in elected office to express what policies they would bring forward. This is way too big a conversation. It shouldn't just be among the electeds behind the dais. This is a conversation we need to be having as our communities and countywide. This will affect us for years to come. Homelessness doubles every 7 years. City of Lincoln has been very, very lucky with a lot of volunteers that we have. Our number is reducing. We are putting some policies in place that on a small scale seem to be effective. So I don't know that I would put forward any policies other than the fact that we need to continue to talk and to address the issues, the causation of homelessness. Ms. Landon is somewhat wrong in that I do have a 48-year-old homeless child living at home with us. We've taken him in a year ago, and so we know very, very well the effects of homelessness. As far as the Campus of Hope goes, it is real easy for an elected official to take a look at a prepackaged, easy solution to take off the shelf and write a great big check and say, we've solved it. I don't think Campus of Hope does that. I think it creates as many problems as it starts. And so while that may be on a scaled down version, a piece of the solution, I think it's a much broader solution than any of us know at this point in time.
Scott.
My journey started when I had my restaurant. We did a lot of bridal showers. I had a $700 shower. The bride and her mom came into our shop, walked into the back parking lot. Two homeless guys were fighting. They called me and said they wanted to cancel the shower. I was frustrated, contacted the county and said, what can we do about this problem? It's affecting businesses. I got put on the Placer County Homeless Advisory Committee. Dr. Marbett from Texas was brought in. He did a big study of the whole county. His very in-depth report basically said what we're doing is causing more and more chronic homeless. We're not actually solving the problem here. And he talked about models that were working nationwide, and they were wraparound models where they would take a campus and they would put all the services in one campus. You'd have medical in there, you'd have job training, clothing, there would be jobs for people to do, hair salon, and it was housing. It was not shelters, it was actually housing. And the wraparound program was very successful in many cities. And so I joined a nonprofit. We started one to find a solution. They were all volunteers. And we went and traveled and met with different organizations, and we found a model that seemed to work. And we saw several of them. It works. In the county right now, one homeless person costs the county $45,000 a year. It's a HUD figure. These models bring it down to $12,000 a year if you can get somebody into housing. 85% of the residents get restored back into the community. That's a statistic that's proven in these programs nationwide. We have 800 homeless, we think, right now in the county, and it's getting bigger. Pretty soon it's going to be we're not going to be able to handle it. And if we don't fix the problem now, it's going to be like Sacramento where we can't fix the problem. There's some great aspects of this campus. I don't know all the details to it yet. I do know the financial figures are out. If they would just ask, I know they actually have them. But This is actually a solution. I'm tired of electeds kicking the can down the road. This committee doesn't even have homeless groups on it. They're just electeds and staff. So I'd say let's solve this problem and stop worrying about election years. That's it.
All right, thank you. That's certainly a very complicated question. So what we're going to do here is give each candidate an additional minute to make some closing remarks on that topic, since it's pretty big to our community. Let's start with you, Shanti.
Closing comments on the homeless
On the
issue?
homeless situation, yes.
One thing that I would like to note about the Campus of Hope issue, or project, a proposed project, is I would love to see a scaled down version, maybe a 2-year pilot program. Instead of investing $40 million to build a huge campus and just go straight out of the gate, full bore in, not knowing really whether it will be successful here in Placer County. I agree with Scott, there are models around the country that show that a model like that could be successful. But to put that much money in without really knowing what we're doing, I would love to see a scaled down version that does the exact same thing, but just on a smaller scale for 2 years. Give it a try, see how it's working. If it's doing well, great, we can expand it. Maybe it's flexible so that when the economy is doing really well, we can scale it back. When the economy is doing really poorly and we have more homeless folks, then we can expand our programs.
So I do have some thoughts about how we move forward. One is that up at the county government center, the DeWitt Center, was established in the 1940s as a military hospital. It later evolved into being a mental health hospital. That facility currently also has homeless facilities there. I think we should be expanding that. County services all exist there. They're building an $88 million health and human services building there right now on that campus. All those services exist, and those people in the shelters there will be able to simply walk across the campus and access those services. South Placer County is a little more difficult. I think that with the heavier population, the effects on businesses and our communities is greater, and I think a diffused type of solution, smaller facilities, connected to services through some form of dedicated transport makes good sense, and how we work our way through that is yet to be seen.
Scott, please.
The state has $12 billion of funding right now, and if we apply for it, there's a chance we could get it. If you don't apply for it, you don't get it. Right now is a great opportunity to have this campus built for us, but we won't know unless the supervisors decide to apply for it. There's a 1-year residency program that has been happening in cities that are doing projects like this, and it's a great program. It basically says if you haven't lived in the county for a year, you get no homeless services. That's a real good reason to make people move out of the county. There's no feeding programs anywhere but on the campus. There's no services except on the campus. So if you're not in the program, you might as well leave. The campus would have enough housing, and a small shelter would allow the no camping ordinance. So there would be nobody camping out there, and we would make sure to apply enough pressure on people that were camping out there to where they either got in the program or they left, because it just becomes a hassle for them. It's actually a real workable solution, and I'd like to see us again, stop kicking the can down the road. It's time for us to be brave and do something. The location's flexible, but we've got to do something. The electeds need to stop being afraid about this.
Thank you. So next question, Paul, we're going to start with you. So this question is another easy topic in Placer County, transportation. So District 2 is facing enormous growth. Our roadways have reached their design capacity and then some. The solution to elevating some of our traffic issues greatly exceeds our ability to fund this locally, since it requires a 50% local match of a $3 billion project. Measure M was a 1.5 cent tax increase ballot measure to address this shortfall, but barely missed the 2/3 vote threshold to pass in 2016. Will you support and commit to help Placer County Transportation Agency to promote a similar ballot measure for 2022 or 2024? Your thoughts, please.
Well, I'm the immediate past chair of the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. We've worked through this for many, many years. We poll on it. We'll be polling on it this week. If you get a phone call, it's us. Checking to see just where the mood of the citizens is on this. I'm going to correct you a little bit, Mark. It's a $3 billion bill, but development is paying $2 billion of that. So the match is on the $1 billion. That's still a heavy, heavy lift. We need to redo the 8065 interchange. There's a very good design for that, making it safer. Widen Highway 65 all the way to Lincoln. Build Placer Parkway. Widen Baseline. All of those projects are necessary. All of those projects are mitigation for the growth that is inevitable in District 2 and in South Placer. So if the polling says the citizens would support that revenue measure, I think it is my obligation as an elected to put it on the ballot and let the citizens decide.
Thank you. Scott, please.
I had a very bad accident Saturday. I took a big fall, got 6 stitches, 3 fractures in my wrist and a fractured elbow. And one of my campaign team members helped load me up in a truck and take me to the emergency room in Roseville. Stop and go traffic. It was miserable going down 65. Anybody who lives here in Lincoln, you've got to know what a crazy, how crazy this is. The development's coming. The development is not going to stop. There's already planned development for another 15 to 20 years that we can't stop. However, it's going to exacerbate the 65 problem. I'm interested. There's a chance Washington could help with some infrastructure dollars. It's probably a long shot, but we want to exhaust every possible measure before we go to a tax bill. But I think the sales tax measure is about the only thing that's really going to work. And I think it would be my job as an elected to make sure that is the option, and then also educate the community. We did this with the sales tax measure in Roseville. It saved our city. Educate the community, answer questions, provide information, and the nice thing about that kind of a tax measure is we would control it. It's not a state control thing. We don't have to worry about funding going anywhere else. It actually would solve the problem. They already have the designs. They can get to work on it right away once we pass the bill. Any candidate that tells you they will not support tax increases is lying to you, or they're not a very good representative, because sometimes you do need things like that to be able to solve your own problem. So I absolutely would be supportive of it, especially if the community is sick and tired and ready to do this, but we can take the matters into our own hands and actually fix the problem. So yeah, I'm supportive.
As a fiscal conservative, I don't know that I've ever been an advocate or proponent of a tax increase, but this is the one time where I have vocally been supportive of it. And a lot of that has to do with things that they've both already mentioned, which is the change in funding structure. That we used to have a 90-10 match where we would have to come up with 10% of the money and the state and feds would come up with the other 90%. And having that change to a 50-50 match has put an incredible burden on the local community. And as Mr. Joyner mentioned, needing to be a self-help county, that we have to have some type of funding stream or we can't compete for those dollars. Those 2 things were key for me, but a third thing was the local control. So knowing that most often our money goes to the state and then gets divvied back out to us and we don't know where half of it goes, knowing that it's going to be controlled here locally was huge for me. And when I spoke with the executive director of the Placer County Transportation and Planning Agency and said, okay, tell me, what is the option? If this were to fail again, what options do we have? Because the only other option I'm aware of is a parcel tax, and I am not supportive of a parcel tax, and I don't think a parcel tax would pass in Placer County. So what option would we have? And his answer to me was gridlock. That's the other option. So yes, my answer is I am supportive of the tax measure.
Thank you. So the next question is going to be a little bit different, kind of getting outside the box a little bit. So, and we'll start off with you, Scott. Integrity, accountability, and openness to new ideas are important qualities in business leadership. Please share a past experience or decision that led to an undesired outcome and briefly discuss any insights or growth you achieved through the process. Would you like me to repeat that question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I figured you would.
I have to go first on all these questions.
I know. Yeah. I wasn't us, no. Transparency. Integrity, accountability, and openness to new ideas are important qualities in business leadership. Please share a past experience or decision that led to an undesired outcome and briefly discuss any insights or growth you achieved through the process. One more time?
No, that's all
Joking.
right. We've all seen electeds on TV. If you go to your own council meetings, there's a few electeds in our region. The that sometimes just feel like they know everything. They've got all the answers for everything. And what people forget sometimes when they get into an elected position is our job is to be a representative. We're not here to say our own mind. It's not our own feelings. We're here to vote for things that our constituency wants, our stakeholders, the business owners, the residents, even the developers. We need to be able to talk to enough people so that we make ethical decisions. Those decisions need to be transparent. And any elected official will make mistakes. There's a lot of stuff that we decide on that's gray. It's kind of tough. You're trying to figure out what the best solution is, and you've just got to make a vote yes or no on it. And I don't have a specific example, but I know when it comes to business ownership, as a business owner, I've made mistakes as a business owner, made the wrong decision, and had to apologize to my own staff for not having the revenue come in or the tips that came in because of a decision that was made. But you just need to be open and honest and apologize and do a better job. When I became elected, one of the things that I've always worked on is doing my homework. I actually study the documentation. I try to be prepared. I talk to the stakeholders to make sure I understand their viewpoints. And when I go to make a decision, I'm listening to the community talk. I'm listening to the other electeds negotiate, talk about their feelings on it, and I try to make a decision along those lines. That's what we're supposed to do. We're here as representatives. We're not here deciding our own thoughts on things. We truly need to be representatives, and you need to hold us accountable on that. We should always be transparent to you, and we should always be representing you or get rid of us. That's important.
Thank you. Shanti.
So during COVID, one of my biggest areas of focus was advocating for local control. And I can't even count how many emails and letters I sent to state legislators just begging for local control and for them to just release their stronghold and allow Placer County to do its thing and to allow business owners to operate in whatever manner they felt as a business owner, not having to police people that were coming into their businesses. And I failed. I mean, I was not able to change our legislature's mind, and I think we all saw just the devastation on our businesses throughout COVID. And what I learned, and this wasn't necessarily a big light bulb moment for me, but what really was made evident and clear is how incredibly important it is to elect people who are going to stand up and advocate for us as people in the community. I think one of the travesties in our legislature is that there are, I think, only 2 people in the legislature who own a business or have ever operated a business. And that is so detrimental, because the people in the legislature don't realize what it's like to live and work and have to feed your families and have to live hand to mouth, month to month. And when you have to shut your business down for months, they just don't get how that impacts us. And so I just was reinvigorated to focus on getting good people elected. And it all starts here at the local level with school boards and city councils and boards of supervisors, to have people who can fight for us and help be a hedge of protection. I always like to say the biggest threat to Placer County is that we are in the state of California, and we have to do everything we can to protect what we have here.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to talk about a tough one for me. As elected officials, we do our best to make the best decisions with the best available information at the time. And sometimes we get it wrong. The information misled us, laws change. While I was on the council, we had something that was a very simple process. We had to redo our water rates. We hired a professional third-party consultant, assigned 2 council members to work with them for over a year. They brought forward a package to the rest of the council to review and approve. It was very straightforward. John Fett, who's in the room, stood up in the audience that night and, with an attorney in the room, said, "Our attorney says that these water rates are illegal." Well, I have no desire whatsoever to approve anything that is illegal. So I turned to our city attorney and said, is that true? Are these rates illegal? And he said, no, they are not, and let me tell you why. I turned to the third-party consultant. I said, are these rates illegal? He said, no, they are not, and let me tell you why. We approved those rates that night, and for 18 months, everything was fine. 18 months in San Juan Capistrano, there's a ruling on another case that determines that the way we had done it was not allowable. We moved very, very swiftly to rework the water rates. There was a lawsuit filed. Rebates were made along the way. City attorney, in the beginning, a new city attorney said you cannot make rebates. It's a gift of public funds. Okay, well, can't break the Constitution. Then they reversed their opinion. It doesn't make any of us look good. We worked our way through it. I think we've got it straightened out pretty well now. I'm embarrassed by it. I learned a lot by it. You dig a lot deeper on some of these things once you've been through that.
Thank you. So next question is about the American Rescue Plan Act funds, ARPA. Let's start out with Shanti. So since the ARPA funds do not need to be expended until December 31st, 2026, if elected, what are your thoughts on additional funding to our business community with a portion of the $77 million in COVID relief funds the county received?
So I had the fortunate opportunity to be a part of the Placer Shares grants, which Placer County gave out more money to local businesses during that first tranche of funding that came from the federal government. I think it was $16 million that went back to local businesses in that first tranche. And for the ARPA funding, the Board of Supervisors voted to take a large chunk of that and provide infrastructure out to the Sunset area, which has been set aside for jobs creation and economic development. And so I'm supportive of that. I believe that we are in an incredible position here in Placer County. We're not going to be recruiting businesses from out of the state very likely because of the way our state is run, but I do believe we can recruit people from within our state because Placer County has been an oasis in California. We are one of only 5 counties that increased in population during COVID, and that is because we're an amazing place to live. So I would definitely be open to the idea of considering, you know, where some of those other dollars are going from the ARPA funds and how they might assist local businesses. I would have to sit down and really kind of see what are the ideas and what's available, but I'm definitely willing to take a look and consider that.
Great, thank you. Paul?
Short answer is yes. The city of Lincoln has already got a program going through the chamber, as you well know, $1 million of our ARPA funds going to help businesses with a consideration of a second tranche of money if it's appropriate. I think you're specifically talking about the money that came to the county. When I talk about us working together with in my mind, that $77 million is countywide. It's not simply for the unincorporated county. And so, yes, if it would be useful for our businesses countywide to have additional funding to assist them through the effects of COVID and moving forward and growing their business, absolutely, I would be supportive of that.
Thank you. Scott?
We focused a lot of our ARPA funds on small businesses. That was a huge hurt during the COVID situation. We had a council priorities meeting where we actually prioritized a lot of our spending. I think there's a lot of really good decisions that came out of that. Luckily, the ARPA funding is fairly flexible. There's a lot you can do with it. You know, I wasn't in the middle of all the county decisions where they spend it, but having the county put in infrastructure for developers to ease the burden is a little bit concerning because I think there's some other needs around here. I mean, the city you're in right now could use a lot of funding and maybe some extra funding. I think there's transportation things you can use some of that funding for. I think the focus on just thinking about the quality of life aspects, your public safety is where a lot of the money goes and where a lot of it should go. And small businesses, we're building an incubator in Roseville. That's one of the things we're looking to the future on, trying to get businesses to start up there and grow, and hopefully a few of them will latch in and bring employees. So I think ARPA is a great benefit. It did refurbish a lot of our expenditures because we originally thought we were not going to get the money back. We didn't know what was going to happen, but we knew it was important enough to reach out and help, again, the businesses was the big focus. So I'm excited that that money came, and I know it's really helped a lot of communities out.
All right, thank you. So we have a question from the audience, and we're going to start this question with Scott. So let me see if I can read this. Chairperson Gustafson for Placer County in the State of the Union stated that Placer County is being healthy, wealthy, and wise. So the question for our candidates is, do you agree? Do you feel that county is healthy, wealthy, and wise? If so, why? If not, what would you do and your plans to change that or action? I guess that's what it says. Should I read it again, or do you have that?
No, I think I got
Okay.
it. We'll pretend like it. I think the county is healthy and wealthy. I think the county has its pension funds all paid up. Cities don't. We're struggling. The county has been doing development on the borders of our cities. They shouldn't be the developer. They're the applicant and the developer. It's the craziest thing in the world. The cities are always talking about it. They should annex that land into the city and help the city grow. The growth is going to happen. Help out your cities do it. The county should be building affordable housing. They have been absolutely not building affordable workforce housing. And Cindy Gustafson, if anybody, knows that, because up in Tahoe, they have to close down restaurants and businesses during the week because they don't have workers that can live there. They have to drive in, and so they've had a real problem. They're working on it, but they're way behind. And I really feel sorry for that district up there. I know, again, they're working on it. But the problem is the county's been kicking the can down the road. They don't build workforce housing like they're supposed to. They've let the developers change that. In the city of Roseville, we have a policy. It's 10% affordable, and they don't get an option. And our staff enforce that. They don't come back and change that. And the county has allowed in lieu fees, they've allowed other things to happen where the housing does not get built. You can look at the RENA numbers that are coming. They're massive. It's going to affect some of our cities, Lincoln and Roseville especially. But that workforce housing, the lack of workforce housing being built in the county is really hurting our cities. It's raising our housing prices, and our own children have nowhere to live. This is a serious issue. So that's one of the topics that I think we need to really work on at the county level. They've got to have workforce housing. There's several others, but I'm running out of time, so we'll see what Shanti has to say.
Okay, I would agree, actually, that I think Placer County is healthy, wealthy, and wise. I think we are very blessed to have great leadership amongst all of our cities and our county. And, there's always room for improvement. I think we can always do a better job with collaboration and, working better together. But overall, I think we are in an incredible place. And with things like the Placer County Conservation Program, which is now in implementation and is essentially a build-out of Placer County for the next 50 years and will permanently conserve 47,000 acres of contiguous open space in our community, I think that's amazing. And I think that is wonderful for my kids and my future grandkids to be able, that I know they'll be able to enjoy those things. Secondly, things like Hidden Falls Park, which was something that was set aside, again, for people to enjoy. I think it contributes to our quality of life. We have great quality services here. Our Health and Human Services Department has an incredible model. It's called the Placer model. It's known throughout the state. We have special enabling legislation that allows us to partner with nonprofits to be the boots on the ground to get things done. Because in my opinion, government typically does a pretty bad job of getting things done, and especially when it comes to efficiency and doing things well. When it comes to affordable housing, I would agree. I mean, it's a travesty that, my husband and I, when we first got married, we were working part-time, going to school full-time, and able to afford to buy a condo. That's how we started out. And that just doesn't exist for the people who are entering the workforce now. But I personally am a big advocate of, I think, once again, the private sector can do a better job. I don't believe government does a good job and should be constructing housing projects. I think that the private sector and Housing Trust Placer was formed, I think it's been maybe 2 years now, but Placer County put in $500,000 to that fund and is letting the private sector, the nonprofits, handle putting affordable housing up, because I think once again they're going to do a better job because they're built to operate more efficiently than the government is.
You're going to find that although Scott and I are of very different political minds, we both represent municipalities, and we both know what it is to work, to attempt to work with the county. Is the county healthy? Absolutely. Is it wealthy? Yes, they've got $1 billion budget. They are very wealthy. Are they wise? When it comes to governing the unincorporated county, they are pretty wise. They are not partnering with the cities. The county flag, the new county flag, has the county seal on it and 6 stars underneath. Anybody have any idea what those 6 stars are? Those are the cities. Those are the cities. They recognize symbolically that we're all in this together, but not cooperatively. And so Scott had mentioned these projects being thrown up right on our borders. Placer Ranch to our south, Bickford Ranch just off our border this way. The county keeping all of that revenue for themselves. The unwise part is this. If you are buying a new home in Placer Ranch, you can literally look over your back fence when PG&E turns off the power for the rest of us and see your neighbors in Roseville across your back fence with their lights on. That won't be the case in Placer Ranch. You'll look at the great parks in Roseville and the Parks and Rec programs in Roseville. You won't have those because the county doesn't have a Parks and Rec department. The county doesn't have a streets department. The county doesn't have a water department. So the county is acting as a municipality, but doesn't have any of the services in place to actually be able to stand up a true government service to take care of those residents as the municipalities do. And so Scott is right. These projects are meant to happen. It's in the county's general plan that they've developed in the cities, and annexation should be happening. The county is working directly in opposition to us and in competition with us to the harm and the detriment of the cities, and that needs to stop.
Great. Thank you, Paul.
May we do a 1-minute response?
You've been on time all night. You guys.
Let's take off the gloves.
Okay, just a quick response, because my perspective is not that the cities are victims of the county. My perspective is that, yes, again, there always can be a better job that is done, but the county covered all of Lincoln's costs for entering the Placer County Conservation Program, $3 million plus that the county has covered for the city of Lincoln. They negotiated a tax share that is unprecedented, has never been done before, and they were willing to do because they finally came to the table and had a conversation and were willing to partner. The Sunset area in 2011, Roseville and Lincoln were both approached and asked if they would like to annex Roseville all the way up north to Placer Parkway, Lincoln all the way south to Placer Parkway, and it was dead on arrival that they made the decision not to annex that property. Now the county is in a position where they are developing that property, and again, I don't support retail that is right on the borders of the cities of Lincoln and Roseville, but to me, being a supervisor is a bigger vision. It's bigger than just that one city, and the decision that a supervisor makes that impacts Lincoln is also going to impact Tahoe, that we have to be thinking the whole county and not just one city. But I agree, there needs to be great partnerships, and I think Placer County, if you look at our quality of life, that's because of a history of partnerships, and there's always going to be tension between jurisdictions, but again, I don't think it's a black and white that the county takes advantage and the city is a victim. That if a city is run well, they're not going to be a victim. They will be great at negotiating, and they won't walk away feeling like they lost something.
So I'm going to have Paul respond to that next, and then we'll go with Scott.
I'm going to be cautious about this. I think we all feel passionate about this. I think we all come from different perspectives. Ms. Landon is incorrect about some of her information. The city of Lincoln, to my knowledge, was never, and I was on the council at the time, was never approached and asked if they want to annex all the way to Athens, and would not have been able to do so at the time anyway. My understanding is, and Scott, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I've heard from many, many, many sources that Roseville was considering annexing in Placer Ranch, wanted to annex in Placer Ranch, but Supervisor Wygant fought it very, very hard. So we all have our perspectives on what's going on. The truth is that right now, massive developments are happening in the unincorporated county where the county's own general plan says they should not be happening. And so those decisions are made. We're going to have to live with it. We're going to have to work with it. But moving forward, we can't be doing that type of thing any longer.
Thank you, Paul. Scott?
I would encourage you to talk to any council member in Roseville or Rockland about this particular issue, and you're going to hear that Paul and I are right. The county has not been giving fair deals. We couldn't annex into Roseville because it wasn't a fair deal. That was the reason. And I think right here is a great example of your representative. Who's going to represent you? Is it going to be somebody that's going to represent your city and help your city flourish? Or is it going to be, the county knows what they're doing? Again, talk to all of your council members, every single one of them. They're going to give you the same story. This is an issue. This is a big, big deciding issue in this election. I hope you guys choose wisely. You need somebody who will represent you.
Thank you. So that concludes our formal questions for the night. So we're going to wrap this up with each candidate. Each have 3 minutes to do your closing remarks. And let's start out with Paul.
Well, I think we got a lot of my my closing remarks in. I'll just say this. In the beginning, I said that this is an important election for all of us, and it is. But it's especially an important election for all of us from Lincoln. And it's because of those tax sharing agreements we talked about. Lincoln has struggled to provide police and fire protection for as long as I can remember, and it's because of those tax sharing agreements. Yes, the county finally came to the table and They did not renegotiate tax sharing because that would have kicked open a door for all the other cities to do the same. But we did come to an accommodation that has helped, and we are grateful for that. But that was hard fought on our part, and they were willing to come to the table. So I'm grateful for that. I think what that really goes to is what I've said all along, that we should be working together to the benefit of all of us. Not just the unincorporated county, not just the cities. We should be working together, and that is the role of a supervisor, is to build those relationships, to build those partnerships as we move forward. A sign of that for me, the partnerships that I have built, the relationships I've built, are the endorsements that I have. I'm endorsed by Congressman LaMalfa, Congressman McClintock, Senator Jim Nielsen, Assemblyman Kevin Kiley, Supervisor Suzanne Jones, Sheriff Devin Bell, the Deputy Sheriff's Association, Placer County Republican Assembly, the Sacramento Firefighters Local 522, which includes the Lincoln Fire Department, and many, many others. It's taken years to build those relationships and those partnerships. I'll continue to build those as I move on and become your county supervisor, and I'll continue to fight for appropriate tax sharing agreements, not just for Lincoln, but for all of our cities. And again, my name is Paul Joyner, and I'm asking for your vote.
Scott.
I want to go back to the comment about being a representative. Somebody who represents you needs to be somebody who listens to you and votes on your behalf, regardless of their political party, regardless of their personal beliefs. I have a track record of listening and meeting with stakeholders and making wise decisions. I have a very strong business background. I've been doing economic development in the county for a long time. For 4 years, I've been the chair of the Placer County Economic Development Board. I'm on the Greater Sacramento Economic Development Council, Roseville Economic Development Advisory Committee. I've been going to that since I owned my restaurant, and now I chair it. Economic development is important because that is the funding, a major part of funding, that goes into quality of life aspects, your police and fire. Your police and fire in Lincoln are decimated right now. We got to build those back up. Parks and recreation, that's a big quality of life. That all comes out of your general fund. Economic development feeds your general fund. These type of thoughts and these type of decisions to help cities flourish, I'm your candidate for that. I understand it, I get it, I've been doing it, I'm connected to businesses, and I have been a very good representative. I'm not just telling you I'm going to be a good representative, I have been. I would really encourage you to go to the website on the paper that you have, on my sheet that was on your seat. Go to the testimonials, go to the endorsements, and read the testimonials. Every single person that endorsed me explained why. Read those. You're going to see a very common thread, and there's a lot of people in there that you know and you respect. It's not just political names, it's actually people in your community. And so I encourage you to do that. That's who I am. They're very consistent. I will represent you. I promise I will represent you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to do my closing comments by doing a survey. So who in here loves living in Placer County? Just raise your hand if you love living in Placer County. If you keep your hand down, I'm going to assume you dislike Placer County. So, okay, pretty much unanimous that everyone in here loves living in Placer County. So a couple days ago, Mr. Joyner sent out an email that pointed to both of his opponents and had a comment in that email, and I really wanted to address it. So in the email, he mentions, Shanti openly states that she thinks Placer County doesn't need to change, and that if elected, she will carry on the legacy of the current supervisor. So that was meant to be a criticism. I actually take it as a compliment. So I am 100% absolutely unequivocally proud of the fact that I want to protect Placer County and protect what we have here. It's very important to me. Yes, we're going to grow in population. Yes, that's going to change. But when it comes to the heart and soul of Placer County and the people that are here and the amenities that we have, take a look at Hidden Falls Park. We want to protect that. Take a look at our wine and ale trail. We want to protect that. Take a look at our adorable downtown here in Lincoln. We want to protect that. I don't want Placer County to change, okay? That is the truth, and I will admit it. I will shout it from the rooftops, and that is the truth. Secondly, I absolutely love the fact that we have had great leadership for decades in Placer County. I know that it was pointed out early on that only 2 supervisors served over the last 50 years. To me, that's actually a good thing in the sense that every 4 years there was an opportunity to boot those people out of office. But every 4 years, they won. And one of the good things about having that institutional knowledge is when you have a new supervisor, it takes almost 2 years to really get a grasp of how county operations work. We have had the pleasure and the privilege of having people who have a long history of running the county. And yes, we may not agree with what they've done and we may not like the things they've done, but to me, you know the saying, history, if you don't know history, it's doomed to repeat itself. And having good leadership over the last 50 years in Placer County, to me, is a good thing. I want to maintain a presence and consistency, and the benefit of being the district director at the Placer County Board of Supervisors for the last 5 years has given me the opportunity to, on day one, walk into my role and know exactly what I'm doing because I already have been doing it, except for voting, for the last 5 years. And to me, that's a big plus. And so I'm super appreciative of the chance to be here. If you look at my website, you will see I have more than 80+ local endorsements. They are from people who live and work in this community. I may not have the state and federal leaders, but I've got the unanimous support of the Western Placer Unified School District. I have the unanimous support of the Roseville City Council, aside from my friendly competition here. And other city council members, other community leaders, other volunteers who truly are living and working in this community every single day. And I hope that that speaks to how I would govern and how I'm going to be connected to our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Because these type of forums are important, it gives you, the constituents, an opportunity to hear from the candidates so that you can make informed decisions, so that you can pick the candidate who you think is going to best represent Placer County. So I'd like to also shout out to the candidates here and thank you for taking your time to participate in this candidates forum tonight. So please give them a big round of applause. I'd like to thank our Chamber's CEO, Tom Indry, and his staff for pulling this together tonight. And Willie, our tech guy, because everything worked perfectly. That's just great. And Josh in the back here also helped pull this process together. He was working for the chamber. And lastly, Rocket TV and also the Women's Club for allowing us to host here. So thank you.
Can I just correct something really quick? It's just for the record. Lincoln's public service is not decimated. The other night, we authorized hiring 9 new firefighters, which will stabilize that department. We've authorized hiring 4 new police officers, new dispatchers, new battalion chiefs. We are doing well.
So I think that concludes our comments for tonight. Thanks, everybody. Have a good, hey, there's some cake in the back. Grab your piece of cake on the way out. Thank you.